from San Francisco. So we are now all aware of the risks. Obviously, AI has so many benefits, but there's a laundry list of risks when it comes to this. And obviously, a lot of people are pointing out that it could even lead to humanity's extinction. Based on the fact that we now know the risks, what should we be doing differently?
Well, so the point of the letter was primarily just to raise attention that everybody involved, or most of the people who are developing AI technologies, think this is a serious concern. That enables us to start to take actions to mitigate these sort of risks, because it could potentially lead to extinction. So because we're caught in an AI arms race currently, the AI companies are racing forward, developing these technologies ever quickly, and they're prioritizing the development speed and power of these AI systems over their safety. So since they're locked in an AI arms race, we don't want a repeat of the nuclear arms race, where we got extremely powerful weapons that could destroy all of us, and it puts all of us at the risk of extinction. So the way to counteract that isn't just to let the companies take care of it and do research, but we also need broader cooperation between the corporations, but also internationally between different countries as well. That's the only way we can reliably ensure that we're not caught in any AI arms race.
So just in terms of specifics, I mean, how might we mitigate these risks? Give me some specifics in terms of regulation and that sort of thing.
So the signatories didn't sign any specific regulation suggestions. There's a wide variety. As you mentioned, there are many different risks, so we're going to need many different regulations to address some of these risks. But there's some basic ones, like we should regulate it at least at the level that we regulate other sorts of products. Before Apple releases their new iPhone, they have to submit it to an agency to review whether it's safe before it's rolled out to the entire public. There's no such thing like that for AI. And so that's one at the domestic level. But like with nuclear war, what we had to do to reduce risks of that were international treaties. So that's another possibility, is international cooperation. We need the state leaders speaking to each other, so that we don't have a repeat of the previous century where we keep stockpiling and making extremely powerful systems that could blow up in our face. We'd like to avoid that. And so we're trying to be proactive about these risks.
Isn't part of the issue that there are just so many unknowns? I mean, we really are in uncharted territory here. That's part of the issue and some of the roadblocks when it comes to regulating this.
Yeah, I mean, we have a fair amount of uncertainty with respect to exactly when would some sort of climate hazards occur. So I think we can deal with uncertainty in trying to mitigate some of these global issues. We also don't know when the next pandemic will come from. Will it come from a lab accident? Will it come from wildlife? It's not clear, but there are things we could do to address these risks, such as reduce competitive pressures and work toward cooperation.
I mean, beyond the sort of Armageddon scenario, there are all sorts of obvious risks when it comes to the elimination of millions of jobs, for example, white-collar jobs, blue-collar jobs, that sort of thing, and also the potential to undermine democracy when it comes to spreading misinformation. How should we be mitigating those types of risks?
So with automation, I'm not sure there's an easy way to get out of that if there are intense competitive pressures. Basically, if a company decides not to automate things with AI, if AIs are much cheaper, then they'll get outcompeted. So there's some pressure for these companies to continually automate more and more as AI gets stronger. So we're going to need to change that dynamic if we're having any hope of making sure there isn't mass unemployment. Likewise, for misinformation, there's again a competitive pressure. One company is going to use AI to create, or one group is going to use AI to create misinformation. The other one's probably going to do the same, and it's going to make everybody worse off. So we have arms races at a smaller scale in the case of using AI to create misinformation, but then there's an arms race at a larger scale, just making them have more raw power. So this is why we need to proceed much more slowly and carefully throughout its development, and try and get institutions set up so that developers are held to a similar standard, and so that countries can work together to avoid this issue, just as we did with nuclear, or just as we work toward with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, as you point out, it's all about eliminating or reducing competitive pressures. Dan Hendrycks live for us there. Thank you so much. And that is Quest Means Business.